Hey guys, welcome back to Intelligent Faith 315. My name is Pastor Jay. I run the website and coordinate all the efforts of our team and so forth. If you're watching this video and you happen to be on YouTube and our YouTube channel, do encourage you to pause the video, open up another tab on your browser, and go to intelligentfaith315.com. It's our mother website. If you find these videos and content intriguing or maybe irritating, I encourage you to go over to our mother website. There you'll find some really good stuff. You can look at our archives, past articles, folks that we connect you to and link you to, and good videos as well. So go check out our main website, intelligentfaith315.com. And while you're there, if you haven't done so, type in your email address on the email subscription. Every new post will then come directly into your email account, and you can just build up your own personal library of content and make it very convenient for you to pass it on to other people. Today, as we've been discussing in the past, we're going to continue with our series, The Non-Christian Historical Evidence for the Man, Jesus of Nazareth. As we talked about, there's a lot of evidence, obviously, in terms of Christian historical sources, whether that be the early church fathers or the New Testament writers themselves. The New Testament is one of the best ancient documents that we have that has a historical and archaeological verification. It actually happens to be, I believe, the best, the most well-attested ancient historical document in the world that we still have in our possession, in terms of the quality of manuscripts, number of manuscripts, and then the extra credibility that's added to it from historical verification, archaeological verification, etc. But if you're unaware of that, again, these ancient, non-Christian, in other words, secular historical sources, this is great information to have. Because you as an atheist, possibly if you're watching this, or a secular humanist, or just maybe a seeker, you may not even be convinced that Jesus of Nazareth actually ever existed. Like many atheists commonly say, Christoper Hitchens, I've heard him say that a couple times, although he's passed on now. God bless his family, we're praying for them. And also Richard Dawkins and others. So if that is a question in your mind, that's good. It's a good question. We want to give you a good answer for that. So again, we've got ancient historical sources, in other words, ancient historians, who speak about this man, this Jewish carpenter from Nazareth named Jesus, such as Flavius Josephus, Tacitus, Suetonius, Julius Africanus, and Thallus. We're also going to take you guys through government sources, in other words, ancient political people of the Roman Empire who verify Jesus' historical existence, such as Emperor Trajan, Pliny the Younger, and Emperor Hadrian. And then we're also going to take you through some Gnostic documents. This is an ancient heretical Christian group that existed. Some of the documents like the Gospel of Truth, the Apocryphon of John, the Gospel of Thomas, the Treatise on the Resurrection, the Acts of Pontius Pilate, and the writings of a man named Phlegon. Those are Gnostic sources that testify to Christ's existence. And lastly, some Jewish sources such as the Talmud and a document named the Toledoth Jesu. They all speak to the verification, historical verification of this man, Jesus of Nazareth. And again, as I said, I'm just going to be walking you guys through a dissertation, a large article that Dr. Gary Habermas from Liberty University wrote, published on his website, GaryHabermas.com, and it's entitled Ancient Non-Christian Sources on the Life of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. This is not my research, it's his research. This guy's a phenomenal historical apologist. I think he is the #1 historical defender of the resurrection of Jesus, solely from historical evidence that we have today. So check out GaryHabermas.com. He's a great guy. Love this man, great apologist. So today, as I said last week, we are going to go through Tacitus and possibly Suetonius. I'm going to read to you guys what their ancient documents say. In other words, I'm going to quote to you the references that they write concerning Jesus. What were the paragraphs or sentences they wrote concerning this man Jesus? And then, from those sentences, what can we draw out of that content and learn and establish historically about this man Jesus? Let me take a drink. I talk quite a bit, talk too much, some people say, and I have to keep my throat dry. Okay, so here we go. Tacitus. Cornelius Tacitus, he lived from 55 to about 120 AD, was a Roman historian who lived through the reigns of over half a dozen Roman emperors. He has been called the greatest historian of ancient Rome, an individual generally acknowledged among scholars for his, quote, moral integrity and essential goodness. Okay, so a good historical source, even acknowledged by secular people. Okay, Tacitus's histories they're referenced by numerous people well outside of the Christian family. Okay, he's a reliable historical source. Tacitus is best known for his two works, the Annals and the Histories. The former, the Annals, is thought to have included 18 books, and the latter, which is the Histories, to have included 12, for a total of 30 books. The Annals covers the period from Caesar Augustus's death in 14 AD to that of Caesar Nero, in 68 AD. While the Histories, it begins after Nero's death and proceeds to that of Emperor Domitian in 96 AD. Okay? He's an interesting source because Nero and Domitian and Augustus, these are all Caesars who are involved at some point in the Gospel New Testament narrative. And anyway, it's interesting to have historical verification of events that happened during their lifetimes. But let's get on to see what he says about the man Jesus of Nazareth. Tacitus recorded at least one reference to Christ and two references to early Christianity, one in each of his major works. The most important one is found in the Annals, written about 115 AD. So this is a very early source. The following reference was recounted concerning the great fire in Rome during the reign of Nero. Here we go. Quote, consequently, to get rid of the report, Nero fastened the guilt, he's speaking of the guilt of Rome being on fire, the guilt, and he inflicted the most exquisite tortures on a class hated for their abominations, called Christians by the populace. Christus, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilate, or actually he says Pontius Pilatus, and a most mischievous superstition, most people think he's referring to the resurrection, thus checked for the moment, again broke out not only in Judea, the first source of the evil, but even in Rome, where all things hideous and shameful from every part of the world find their center and become popular. Accordingly, an arrest was first made of all who pleaded guilty, and then, upon their information, an immense multitude was convicted, not so much of the crime of firing the city, as of hatred against mankind. Mockery of every sort was added to their deaths. They were covered with the skins of beasts, they were torn by dogs and perished, or they were nailed to crosses, or they were doomed to the flames and burned, to serve as a nightly illumination when daylight had expired. He continues and he says, Nero offered his gardens for the spectacle, and was exhibiting a show in the circus, while he mingled with the people in the dress of a charioteer, or stood aloft on a car. Hence, even for criminals who deserved extreme and exemplary punishment, there rose a feeling of compassion. For it was not, as it seemed, for the public good, but to glut one man's cruelty that they were being destroyed. End quote. So that's a very interesting and fascinating report from the Roman historian Tacitus from 115 AD. Dr. Habermas continues then, and he's going to draw out of that narrative, that short quotation, what can we learn historically about the existence of Jesus and the early Christian church. He says this, from this report we can learn several facts, both explicit and implicit, concerning Christ and the Christians who lived in Rome in the 60s AD. Chronologically, we may ascertain the following information. Number 1, Christians were named for their founder, Christus, from the Latin. Number 2, he was put to death by the Roman procurator Pontius Pilatus, also Latin. Number 3, during the reign of Emperor Tiberius is when this took place, 14 to 37 AD. Number 4, we learn that his death ended, quote, the superstition for a short time. And number 5, we can learn it broke out again at a later time. Number 6, we can learn especially in Judea, where this teaching had its origin. We can learn, number 7, that Christ's followers carried his doctrine to the city of Rome. Number 8, we can learn when the great fire destroyed a large part of the city during the reign of Nero, which was 54 to 68 AD, the emperor placed the blame on the Christians who lived in Rome. Let me just tell you, that's a well-known historical fact. And why is it a historical fact? Because we refer to the writings of Tacitus. But if you're going to refer to the writings of Tacitus for that, you have to be consistent and look at the other information that Tacitus said. So, number 9, we can learn, Tacitus reports that this group, the Christians, was hated for their abominations. Number 10, we can learn these Christians were arrested after pleading guilty. In other words, for being Christians, for believing and following Christ, for worshiping him rather than Caesar. Number 11, we can learn many of them were convicted for, quote, hatred for mankind. Number 12, we can learn that they were mocked. Number 13, we can learn that they were then tortured, which included being, quote, nailed to crosses or even burned to death. Some people deny that. Some people deny the early 1st century persecutions of the Christians. Tacitus, he verifies it for us historically. 14, we can learn, because of these actions, the people had compassion on the Christians. And the 15th historical fact we can learn about the Christians in Christ through the writings of Tacitus is, Tacitus therefore concluded that such punishments were not for the public good, but were simply to glut one man's cruelty. So, 15 significant historical facts can be learned from Tacitus's references to Jesus and to the existence of the early church and the punishments and persecutions. Got a couple minutes. Let me go to Suetonius. Actually, you know what? There's another reference from Tacitus. The second reference to Jesus in the writings of Tacitus is found in the histories. While the specific reference is lost, as is most of this book, the reference is preserved by a man named Sulpicius Severus. Sulpicius Severus. Okay. He informs us that Tacitus wrote of the burning of the Jerusalem temple by the Romans in 70 A.D. Titus Vespasian sacked Jerusalem and the temple in 70 A.D., an event which destroyed the city. The Christians are mentioned in this reference as a group that were connected with these events. All we can gather from this reference is that Tacitus was also aware of the existence of Christians other than in the context of their presence in Rome. Granted, the facts that Tacitus and most other non-biblical sources report about Jesus are well known in our present culture. Yet, we find significance in the surprising confirmation for the life of Jesus. So we have two references to Tacitus, and the second one is confirmed by Sulpicius Severus, and he writes about the burning and the sacking of Jerusalem and the temple, and how Christians were involved even in that geographical location, in addition to their involvement in Rome. So that's all the time we have for today. It's an awesome thing when you can find verification for the Christian worldview and faith outside of the historical biblical documents, also in non-Christian ancient writings. Fascinating stuff. That's the Roman historian Tacitus. Again, his dates, according to my information, were from 55 to 120 AD, and those historical references, the first one was from 115 AD, so a very good early ancient non-Christian historical source referencing Jesus and the early Christians. We're going to continue with this next time. We'll talk about Suetonius, and then we'll move on from there. God bless you guys. Have a great day. Check out our content. Register for the email update if you haven't done so. Pass some of this stuff on to your friends. And until next time, have an intelligent faith. See you then.